Okay. And now let me introduce you to Sunny from her ALS stories. And we would like to thank Brainstorm Cell Therapeutics as our main sponsor. And I think that's about it. Sunny, take it away.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. If you don't know me, I'm Sunny Browse. I live in Hico, Texas. I was diagnosed in January of 2015. And welcome to the second year of our Fight ALS Film Festival. Today we are joined by the amazing Ruth Fitzmaurice, who was one of the co-stars of It's Not Yet Dark. And I, like Glenna said, if you want to throw questions in the chat, I'll work them in, or if you want to raise your hand and join the conversation, you're welcome to do that as well. So Ruth, thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing this film with us. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us anything you want to tell us, and we'll kind of jump in.
Thanks, Sunny. Hi, everybody. I'm really honored that you all watched. It's not my film, but I mean, it's my family. It's very personal to me. Um, yeah, it's amazing to me. It feels almost like a home movie, and so the idea that other people get to watch it and that would help anyone else is really cool to me. Because when my husband Simon was diagnosed in 2008, I guess that's all I wanted. I was so hungry for some kind of emotional map through MND or ALS, as you guys call it, and there was nothing available. Back then, the only person we'd ever heard of who had ALS was Stephen Hawking, and as much as we were. Simon was determined to fight, and he had two amazing sisters who helped with all of that stuff. I was sort of the emotional center of the whole thing, and that's all I wanted, was some kind of way to feel my way through it. And I was just hungry for literature or movies or anything I could find, and there was nothing. So the fact that we have something now that can help anybody else is just really cool to me. So yeah.
Awesome. That was very central to the whole movie. I just kept thinking, man, this is what I want people to watch when they ask what I'm going through, or they want a better description, or as we welcome new members into this community, like, watch this movie. It'll give you the words, it'll give you the just the way to break it down and make it make sense, because so much of the disease doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you for that. That was you definitely hit the mark with the film, for sure.
Well, it's kind of cool because the director is actually a childhood friend of mine, Frankie Fenton. So his older sister is one of my oldest friends. So when he came to the house and filmed, we were living with nurses in the house anyway, so we were used to having extra people in the house. But honestly, it was the most comfortable process. We just chatted to him. We know him really well, so there was that level of comfort and ease through the whole thing, I think, that really helped make it very real.
What was kind of the timeline from, I mean, obviously it's a lot of home video with filming, like you said, at your house. How long did you film at home, kind of start to finish? How long was this project?
So that's a really good question. Now you have to bear in mind that at the time it was made, I had so many young children, I probably lost count of them. So my concept of time is a little, well, it still is a little bit compromised. So I don't know is the answer, but all I do know is that Simon began writing his book, the name of the film, It's Not Yet Dark, in about 2012. I think it was published in 2014. He was also crowdfunding to get his film made. My Name is Emily. He wanted to direct a movie, and so right back when they were crowdfunding for the movie, the producers felt like we're doing something really dynamic and really unusual here, and we really feel that we should record the process as we go along. So really, from the time the film was in pre-production, they were conscious of filming stuff. So it was really piecemeal along the way. And then they weren't in the house. I'd say the footage in the house was probably like a week. And then there was a lot of Simon, being a director, of course, had been using little home devices to video the kids for years. So we had a lot of home footage. And the beautiful thing that the filmmakers did actually was gather all our bits and pieces. As you know, we're all like that. We have bits on drives here and drives there, and they just gathered all of our stuff and made it, put it in a big file, and then, you know, put all our memories together, which is something that I don't think we would have ever done. So I'm actually really grateful for them just for that, to have all of those memories concentrated, you know. So that's a roundabout way of saying, Sonny, that I haven't a clue.
Yeah, perfect. We're all just winging it on a prayer and a
Yeah.
Dr. Pepper. So was it Simon's desire to take it past the book into a film, or was that a collaborative decision? Or how did that kind of come up?
Yeah, good question. It was really Simon driven. I really felt from the time he was diagnosed that um we all sort of just followed whatever his desires were. We just tried to make them happen and make him as comfortable as possible. And he just had this huge burning desire to make the film. Um, and he was, you know, not an introvert, so he was quite happy to be to be documented and filmed, and he found great meaning in that, in terms of making sense of what was happening to him too. So I wouldn't. I'm the shyer one. It wouldn't have been really my choice, but anything that he found fulfilling, I was quite happy to go along with, because I felt like it was his. It was led by him, if you know what I mean. That was his. That was a way I could be a loving partner, was to accommodate what he wanted. So that's how I ended up in all these crazy, chaotic, media heavy situations. And we were just winging it a lot of the time in a Dr. Pepper, as you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that he talked about, like, I couldn't write those letters to my kids because that felt too final or too sterile. And then we go from like, oh, so I wrote a book instead, to, oh, so now we have a movie. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the same in that category of like, oh, we should do this, and then it quickly escalates into a mountain of just
Yeah.
chaos.
Absolutely. One thing leads to another, and it's quite an organic process of one great idea leads to another, and suddenly you find yourself in a whole new situation. And I think time is really is connect, in that it's quite an intense time as well. Like, you're living, I'm sure you can relate to that. You're living every day very fully and intensely. I certainly remember that back then. And so it's like time stretches out a little bit too. So days are long. I like, even when you asked that question about the timeline, I remember there are so many events, say, concentrated in 1 year, that I still can't get my head around that all of those things happened in that 1 year, because it was just so rich with stuff. It's a really intense, beautiful way to live. Um, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity, like the opportunity. What a thing to say about an illness, but it just gave this richness to our lives. It's just my experience now, so I am grateful for it. Yeah.
Yeah. that kind of brings in Glennis said, I love that it was a love letter to you and your kids. Do your kids watch it every once in a while to see their dad?
Yes, so what we do every year is we try and watch it on his birthday. Simon's birthday is on the 24th of September. We watched it last year, and it's I'm really glad that it's there for them. It's not the kind of thing that you'd sit down and get the popcorn out for every other week. You know, it is quite a it's quite a an intense experience for the kids to watch it. So I usually put it on. Some of them come in and sit and watch the whole thing. A few others will sort of peek in the door. We'll all have a good cry, but we're all really glad that it's there and we can reach for it if we need it, you know. But I think everybody takes their own time. It's only, well, it's like 5, 6 years now since he died, and I think once a year is enough for us to go back there. Um, and it brings up a lot of feelings for them, a lot of chat. But we outside of that, we talk about Simon a lot in the day to day. It's just the experience of the documentary itself is a lot, you know, in one go for them. Yeah.
Um, I'm bad at math. How old is everybody right now?
Good question. Well, now they're my eldest Jack is going to be 18 in August, and the twins Sadie and Hunter are 11. Yeah, they grow up fast. I'm in a house full of teenagers now. It's very different. And that was the wonderful thing too about back then, because I think, and that it's usually a question people ask me, so I'm preempting this. You know, what in God's name are you thinking of having more children? Why would you do something like that? And I just spent all day today minding my sister's two children because she was away at a wedding, and they're 2 and 5. And it was such a nice reminder before doing this interview, because I'd forgotten how immersive, when they're that age, it's so immersive. And you really don't have time to dwell on anything but the task at hand. So it's just such a beautiful, life affirming, in the moment way to live with young children. You can't brood on anything, you can't worry, because they're just, you know, pulling at you for drinks and snacks and attention. So it makes perfect sense to me that we would be, you know, when there was illness in the house, we would also be surrounded by as many young children and puppies and whatever as we possibly could. And it just worked for us, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you killed it. Just watching, like,
I
yeah.
had as many as I could, Sonny. I can't have any more now. I've had enough. 5 is enough.
Yeah, I believe I will take your word for it. One question I had during the film, have you been back to New York since you were engaged?
No, I haven't actually. No.
I just got to go do the actual like New York City experience within the last month. So when you brought that part up in the film, I was excited because I had actually been there.
Yeah, I would love to go back with the kids when they're older, and now that they're all heading into the teenage years, they're more into city breaks and things. So it is definitely something that we will do.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, for sure. But you need them older and ready to walk around.
for sure.
A lot of memories when we do go back. Yeah.
George asks, a lot of people have compared the movie to Gleason. Have you seen it? What is access to necessary technologies like in Europe? Thanks for being here and sharing.
Oh, thank you. I don't know the movie Gleason. Is that I haven't seen that. Access to technology, you mean like eye gaze computers and stuff like that? Well, I don't know what it's like for you guys now. I sort of felt, because Simon was diagnosed a few years ago, it was really on the cutting edge of a lot of things. Um, and he had a lot of support. Uh, he had a Toby, I think, so, and that was the computer he had initially. And even in the course of the time that he had it, they were upgrading, and the models were getting better and better as like month on month. There was one thing that I think he was sorry that he didn't get to do, because obviously when he had to go to the computer voice, he had an American voice, which we all thought was hilarious, and it was really strange at first to get used to. And then I remember there was some kind of new technology out there where you could record your voice before losing it and then use that as your voice. But he had missed that opportunity, so he got his dad to record it because they have sort of similar voices. So they used a mix of his voice and a hybrid one that was a mix of the two of them to use as his voice, and he tried that for a while, and we had gotten so used to his computer voice that this weird leprechaun man just sounded really weird. So he went back to the American voice. So it was just what we were used to. And I still find it strange because sometimes you'll be in situations like in airports and stuff, and it'll be the same voice, and the kids will be like, "That's Dada's voice," you know. What is that voice there for? It's just amazing. But we adapted to it and it was fine.
So was the American voice the only option, or was that like a conscious choice?
It was the only option. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There might have been a British one, but yeah, we're Irish, so we wouldn't have had, we don't even use the British sat nav. Sorry. No, we're not against British or anything, but it would just be, a little bit too proper. The American sounded nicer. It was just the American.
Well, I asked that because I think I remember in the theory of everything when Professor Hawking was picking his voice, that
Yeah.
his wife was surprised that it was American. And
Yeah.
so that part kind of made me laugh, like that, like we need a pat on the back or something.
Yeah, totally. We loved the American in the end. We accepted him, and he could even give out commands to naughty children, although he was never very tough on them. But he could persuade them with his American voice, and it was very effective in lots of different scenarios.
I love that. Brooke says, love the movie. How did you decide on Australia for your big trip? And can you, sorry, my computer froze, speak to your extension of time there? Is that where you started writing I Found My Tribe?
Oh, good question. Well, the reason we went to Australia is very simple. Our best friends had emigrated there. So my eldest Jack, when he was a baby, we had friends who lived in Greystones, and we had myself and Kath, the girl who went to Australia. We were pregnant at the same time. We had our first babies together, and then just before Simon was diagnosed with MND, they had emigrated just the year before. So the minute they found out about it, they said, "Look, just come over. We'll mind you. We'll give you. You can have a house to live in. We'll lend you a car." And they did all of that. So all we had to do was get on the plane and make it there, and then they were going to look after us, which is what they did. Which is just a phenomenal thing to do in a friendship, and I will be forever grateful, because it honestly was the best thing that we could have done. We felt brave, and it's quite easy to be brave then once you're in, beautiful sandy beach, gorgeous temperatures. The only hard bit was getting there on the plane, and that was even a bit of an adventure, and we just felt like superheroes, and it was just a really lovely time, because there was still so much living to do. And I think that if we had stayed where we were, we would have got bogged down in what was coming. But instead, we were in this whole new environment, in the sunshine, and we just had so much fun. And our friends made that possible. So, yeah, I start writing I Found My Tribe there? No, but I would if I was scribbling in a journal all the time. And so I was keeping just little, not even every day, but just little journal entries about my feelings all the way along. I've been doing that for years anyway, even since I got married. So I had a lot of material there to look back on. But the the start of the book was actually the book that I wrote was a newspaper article I wrote for uh, the national newspaper here, the Irish Times, about sea swimming, and they it was really popular and went viral and stuff. And then I got a few offers of book deals, which was a total surprise, and that sent us down another path. So it's like you say, Sonny, you start on one path. Simon wanted to write a book, then there was a documentary, and then suddenly I was writing a book, and it's like, what is happening? Life was busy. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you highlighted so much the importance of just going, or just jumping and figuring out when you land, and how beneficial it was once you got there. Fears of travel and just the anxiety around not being in a controlled location or not in your own isolated space are conversations I'm a part of all the time. And so it's so great to be able to see, like, this is what makes all that anxiety and stress worth it, because you're gonna grow when you get there.
Yeah, and I think that's the amazing thing about difficult life situations, like diagnoses you don't expect, and when your life gets blindsided, you genuinely surprise yourself in the reactions that you have. And then when you just go with your gut and make these sort of survival instinctive decisions, and they go well, you begin to feel incredibly strong in yourself. And it's quite a surprise. That it was a surprise for me, and I think it really helped my confidence to know to be able to see how well we responded under stress, and the unexpected gifts that came from it, really unexpected. And it all came from love. I mean, it was because I adored Simon, and we, you know, when you're doing stuff, I think when your decisions are based on love, they're usually they usually work out well, you know.
Right, for sure. Kara says, thank you for the film and for being here. Do you have any words of wisdom you would offer to families that receive an ALS diagnosis that already have young children?
Ooh, words of wisdom. I don't consider myself very wise, but I could speak from experience and say, yeah, just look to the children and focus on them, because especially when they're younger. I mean, teenagers are a different story, and I'm sure that brings other challenges if you have teenagers in the house, because just not from seeing, I'm looking in the window at them now. They're just more layers and complexities to teenagers, and they're a different set of challenges. But from my own experience of having young children at the onset of diagnosis, I would say they're gifts. They are a gift to the whole experience. They will do nothing but help you if you just appreciate living in the moment with them. You'll get through it. They just bring you back there all the time if you allow it, you know.
Right, that's so powerful. Just amazing. I catch myself drooling over your accent. I just
Oh,
love it. Absolutely love it.
do I sound like a leprechaun? I'm sorry. I hope you can. I'm not speaking too fast as well. I tend to, you know,
Good. You're good. You sound wonderful. Melissa had asked about how wheelchair accessible is Ireland, and what city have you or what is the most accessible city for someone in a power chair?
brilliant question. No, Ireland is terrible. It's really bad. and even in the time since in the estate we live in now, there used to be a road, a pathway that goes to the local shop and the pub, and it's since been paved. I feel like everywhere's got better in the last few years, but back when Simon was in the wheelchair, it was so bad where we live that he just used to go straight down the middle of the road, usually with a child on his lap. Um, Cars, lines of cars behind him, and they'd all wait patiently, and it was a beautiful sight. It used to make me so happy to see. Um, they used to go down to the video shop back when there were videos. We don't have videos anymore, but remember those things called video shops? And he would go down with my son Jack on his lap, and Jack would swap the video, and he'd sit on his dad's knee, and they drive right down the center of the road through the traffic. So that's how Simon coped with the bad roads. And the best city, I think, I mean, Perth was all right, but it's sort of more like in suburbia, there aren't really footpaths because people drive everywhere. So it wasn't great. But our most fun experience in terms of accessibility, I'd say, was Toronto. Um, we got Simon there for the film festival, and yeah, it was just beautiful. Big lifts, beautiful big sidewalks, you call them. We call them footpaths. Um, yeah, I'd say Toronto was my best.
Awesome. Glynis wants to know if you have any plans for a second book. She just loves reading your words.
Oh, thanks, Glynis. Yes, always. I'm writing away. The only problem, Glynis, is that my children are older now and they don't like me writing about them. So I have to figure out a way of sort of writing about them, but pretending that I'm not, which I guess comes under the fiction category. So I'm still working on that. I just I've been working as well on a screenplay for a film of the book. So that's in pre-production at the moment. So there may well be someday a film to go with the book that I wrote. So that's kind of exciting. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of script writing in the last couple of years on and off, and just scribbling away at another book maybe in the future. Fingers crossed.
It's so cool to see life just happen. Like just something that you're obviously so talented at become more than just a hobby.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, I think, if your job and your hobby can be the same thing, then you're pretty lucky in this world. So, to publish or not, I was always scribbling away. It's just how I make sense of the world. Um, so I will always just do that anyway, you know. And Simon too, we were lucky in that regard. I think that we were a writerly couple, and that's how we made sense of things, because we could channel all of the all of the feelings and all of the difficulties into creative stuff. I think it is harder when your passions are more, sport or physical or that kind of thing. It's I don't know what that feels like because I'm not sport, but I would imagine that it must be harder. So I always felt um relieved for Simon that he got so much out of his writing and his movies and stuff, because he was able to continue doing all of that, and he was stimulated and excited about projects, and that's a huge um you know it's a huge help, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Fully. Robert said the movie was therapeutic for me. I lost my wife 1 year ago. Thanks for your movie.
Oh, lots of love. I'm so sorry. um that's a lovely comment.
And
Yeah.
Bill says,
Here
I'm
it's short.
curious. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just said a year is it's so little time a year. I mean, Simon died in 2017, and grief is just a strange creature. Um, so I would say a year is you're really only, you're not really processing. Well, it's a long way to go. It's a strange and complicated, layered thing. Grief is all I can say. Um, I would send lots of love to that person.
Bill says, I'm curious, he directed this movie. I'm guessing his voiceover in the doc was from the book. What role did he have in producing the documentary?
Oh, none. He wasn't. He didn't. Simon didn't. Well, when I say that, you can never turn the director thing off. So he had lots of opinions about, what it should look like, but at the end of the day, the decision was not technically his. um, but he had lots of verbal input. Yeah, for sure.
So Colin Farrell, that's kind of crazy. Talking about sexy accents. How did that happen?
Yeah, so Simon, the world of directing and films is quite small in Ireland. So through the fundraising for the film and everything, people knew who Simon was. It was such an unusual set of circumstances. So he had a couple of quite famous email buddies. Alan Rickman was another one. Snape in Harry Potter, and himself and I think initially he had got in contact with Colin to play the role of the dad in My Name Is Emily in his movie, which was then played by Michael Smiley. So Colin got in touch and said, thanks for the offer, but I just really feel, he said, I'm not being an ego, but I just, at the time he was a little bit, he says, I feel like I'm a bit young still to play the role of a dad of that age, kind of thing. And then they struck up this email friendship, and they just used to email each other back and forth a little bit. So he was really good to Simon, and always stayed in touch, and they kind of shared poetry and things. And I remember he was filming The Lobster, a movie he made in Ireland, and arrived up at the house one day kind of unannounced in a car just by himself. And he came in to watch a movie with Simon in the front room. Now our house is quite small and it's a bungalow, and so Colin Farrell comes in, and he just scoots into the room with Simon, and they decided to watch The Shining. So they're watching The Shining, which is this really boom, boom, boom. And one of my friends called at the door with their kids. All the kids were, around the house, and we're hearing this really loud music. We kept them out of the room, and my friend called to the door, and she's like, "Hi, what's that noise?" And I said, "Oh, Colin Farrell is in the front room watching a movie with Simon." And I said, "I just had to say that out loud so that, to another human being, because it's so bonkers." And the two of us giggled, and she ran away. So yeah, he turned up a couple of times like that, just randomly for a cup of tea, and to hang out with him. And so then when the documentary was happening, the producers just got in contact with him, and he said absolutely. And they recorded him over whatever magical technology they can use. It wasn't in person. He did it from LA or whatever. And he really he kind of, accent wise, his voice is probably quite close to Simon's. I wouldn't say the actual sound of his voice, but his accent, South Dublin sort of, it would be quite similar. So it was lovely, and he took an awful lot of time to read the book and make suggestions, and being such a pro, just did it in a couple of takes. But I remember the producer, Catherine Kennedy, called me afterwards, and she said, "I've just spent a whole afternoon in the studio with Colin Farrell reading lines from Simon's book." And she said, "Oh my God, Ruth, you were so lucky. How many women get to say that, like hearing Colin's voice saying, 'Ruth, Ruth, my body is on fire for you,' or whatever the line is in the thing, she said, yeah, she was just making fun of me, saying, yeah, wow, how do you feel about Colin saying those words?" And I said, "I don't know, that's weird." But he was acting, obviously. No, but he's a very nice guy. Yeah.
That's That's amazing. Those are the kind of stories that are always so fun when they come out in these conversations. The silly behind the scenes or the
Yeah.
friendships, and I think that's equally as important as to why we do this festival every year. It's just to humanize the process in this disease as much as we can.
Yeah.
So I love that. Um, I'm a highlighter, so like I can't wait to read all the books. I took so many notes during the movie. It's like paused, wrote stuff down. Like I can only imagine how like soaked through the book's gonna be when I get a highlighter to it. Um, but there were just so many like aha moments, or I did that, I had that that feeling or that day. And when he um let's see, I wrote it down. To hear him describe the moment he got MD, and that we all have that thought. And so it's not even the sitting in the doctor's office or the exhaustive process up to that. It's the day that you're like, here we are, this is where we're at. And then it's that pivot from life before and life after. And so to hear him put it so eloquently and such in a way that I feel like I directly related to, and other pals on this call may have felt the same way, to be able to recall that moment for myself and parallel it to Simon's journey was cathartic. And it was very just like, oh yeah, there was a time when for a short while everything was okay. I had ALS and everything was okay. And then we made the decision to move forward, and that was 8 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool to hear you say that. I mean, I can almost feel the rafters lifting here, like Simon is, you know, the ultimate fulfillment for what he was doing. To hear you say that, you know, um, that his experience could be, you know, that he would have made it relatable for somebody else. It's just awesome, you know.
Well, the entire movie was, again, I'll say that I can't wait to like work this into my like conversations with new people. And so that they have a tool in their arsenal for how they move forward with the diagnosis and on this journey. And yeah, yeah.
I can piggyback
Um,
on that as the caregiver. When you said that you went to the clinic, you got your diagnosis, and you just left there and kind of went, okay, well, let's go on with our day like we had planned. My husband and I, Vince, did the same thing. And we ended up going to a place where we also really enjoyed, and I have avoided it like the plague as well. So when you said don't ever do that, I was like, oh, where was this movie
Yeah.
right when I needed it?
It is really, yeah, it's so true, isn't it? It's like the worst thing to ever do. And it's, you know, oh, we'll go to the place we like. Oh, no, we can't like it now anymore. Um, yeah, big mistake. And yeah, they were the things that sorry it was too late for you too then anyway. Um, you got to find a new good place.
Right, exactly.
Gotta do.
um, I loved another part that I really loved that y'all put so much focus and just energy into was the decision for him to get the trach. That is something that is it's so personal, and there's so many pros and cons regardless of which way you decide, and very few people are definite in their decision prior to needing it. And so to see not only his thought process behind how everything happened, and the outcome, and everything he accomplished afterwards, but then to see you guys honoring his decision, joining that conversation, that to me is just speaks volumes to powerhouse caregivers, powerhouse spouses, just how all encompassing this disease is for everyone that loves the person that's diagnosed.
Yeah, and I think that's going back to what I was saying before. It's you feel so helpless as a partner, as a caregiver. It's the only it's the only map that you have is to it's the only way I could get through it was just to try and honor as much of what he wanted as possible. It's how you find meaning in the pathway, you know what I mean? Because you're so lost and you don't know what the right thing to do, and rather than just um um agonize over is this right or is that right? What should we do? It becomes there is no should. It's just what does he want? And how can I help him achieve that? And it gives you some kind of purpose. It did for me anyway. Um, and that's all I could do as the person who loved him was try um, and help make that happen. Now, in saying that, I was great emotional support, but when it came to the actual details, forget about it. I was useless. So I'm not the doer, list maker, um, dynamic person like that. His Simon's two sisters were that. So I was left to just do all the other stuff, which I appreciated because I'm not good at that, you know. And so he was very lucky. He had great support from his family. His mum and dad as well were amazing. He had a team of loving family members who would fight tooth and nail for him, you know. Um, they're a hugely loving family, the Fitzmaurices, and fierce as well when it came to hospitals and decisions. Because obviously in Ireland, the tracheostomy is not something that's given routinely at all, and I presume still isn't. So Simon ended up with the trach in an emergency situation, as you know from the film, I guess, and it was a really hard road. But again, it happened incrementally because we just knew that we didn't want him left in this ICU situation with in a room with no windows. So the decision actually became very simple because it was like, well, we have to get him out of there. Well, how are we going to get him out of there? We have to get him home. And so, one thing leads to another, leads to another. And that's how we, I guess, how we did it.
Yeah. Glenn says it takes a village or a tribe.
Yeah, indeed. It does, and we had both. We had a tribe of villagers or something.
Love it. Bill says, I'm fiercely independent, yet I want to honor my wife who's asking me about caregivers coming into the house. What criteria did you use when to decide to have them join you?
Yeah. Well, Bill, my husband Simon was fiercely independent as well, and it's a really like for me that's a really huge pivotal moment in his illness when it was a very difficult decision to make. When he was from the moment he was diagnosed first, I was his caregiver, and because he was independent and proud, and it was all a little bit embarrassing, um it was just easier that way, and we continued that way for as long as we could. But the reality is that at a certain point it just gets physically too much, In our case, the decision was taken out of our hands when he ended up in hospital and he had to come home and he needed help. So that's how we got around it. And it wasn't something that was easy for Simon until it had to happen. So we didn't end up in a situation where we had to sit down and talk about it or plan it. It just sort of happened, which is how we lived. But I know that it was like, I remember the bond between us as a caregiver, wife, partner. It's such a intense one, and it's got its own set of difficulties. But the 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 advantage of having other people help is that you get back to having that kind of just partner relationship. Even though I would still help as his carer and I was always in the background, it just didn't feel as intense and as draining for either of us, um, with other people helping. So we ended up, the caregivers we had initially, we had, when he came out of hospital, we had a team of people that were set up and interviewed, and we got to meet beforehand. But then because it was agency work, sometime and the roster was quite heavy with people, and they didn't have enough people who were trained in tracheostomy care. We would just get all sorts of people in and out through the house. Some would stay, and it just became a bit of a revolving door. And I guess we just we found a way to protect ourselves in that. And again, Simon's sisters were really great, and they made kind of a folder with all these like lists and helpful things for people to read about his care. And they even made little videos on how to do stuff. So it was kind of like there were people who were revolving through all the time, but then there was always a core, me and his sisters and his mum who knew him and were able to kind of guide people in that care. But it's such a difficult tentative thing, especially when you are independent. And I think the way Simon got over that was he was super controlling about the details, like as in he felt more relaxed when people did it just the right way. And then his sisters, they accommodated that by providing all the literature to make that easy for people to access. It was huge work, and a lot of winging it, as I say. But once, because I was able to learn everything, then I could always be in the background and kind of step in if it was needed. I don't know if that was the question. I went off on a bit of a rant there, but I hope that any of that is helpful.
Glennis asks if My Name is Emily is streaming anywhere, and how did the actors react to taking directions from Simon on the eye gaze? I thought how smart of him to storyboard the day's shoots.
Yeah, it was huge work. Now I don't I'm not sure about the answers to that question, the first bit, but yeah, he they were great. They were really young actors, and they all had, I think actually Ivana Lynch, who also was in the Harry Potter films. She's Luna Lovegood in the Harry Potter films. She's the main actress in the movie. She wrote her own biography about her life, and I think about having an eating disorder, and she dedicated it to Simon because I think she was it was such a unique experience for her as well. It had a huge influence on her. They had it was obviously a different setup to normal. I don't know how much you know about directing films, but it's quite an intensive back and forth and a lot of shouting over each other, and a lot of kind of grungy work on the day on set. And yeah, Simon he prepared a lot with really detailed storyboards. He also had a really good team around him. One of his nurses in particular was with him all the time on the film set, and he had the assistant director role became more of a bigger role on set. So the assistant director would basically become his eyes, and his, like, she would kind of listen to Simon, and then she would shape the direction, and they had all these ways of working. Now obviously it was a little slower and more frustrating for everybody than it would normally be on set, and they factored that in even in the shooting schedule. I think it was all a little bit longer, and they couldn't have as long the days as long as normally they were. But honestly, all of that was secondary to the fact that there was a lot of tentative planning when he went to go on set, and then when it came to the first day of shooting, I think he was just gone, and he ended up staying hours longer than he was supposed to on the set. And he would refuse to come home, and he came back night. He was literally like a man burning on fire. He was just burning with the process of doing it. He was full of energy. He got like really thin while he was doing it, but he just looked really, alive and wired with the energy of it. And he was just there every day. So I think they had planned that he did a lot less, and he ended up doing more than they ever would have anticipated. Yeah.
Well, we are coming up on time. Brooke left a very sweet note that says it's Mother's Day here in the US, so just wanted to wish you a happy one from afar, even though Ireland celebrates earlier, and say thanks for talking with us today. Love the insight into making of this film and your family's experience. I was honored to be in Washington, D.C. this past week with a group of moms who are living with or have lost their children and or spouses to MND. And today is a wonderful bookend to the time with them. Can't wait to read your book and hear the good news on the next film. Thank you so much.
What a lovely message. Thank you so much. And honestly, it's really meaningful for me to connect with all of you, and because I don't, again, it's that time thing, to look back and talk about that time. It helps draw it into my present, and I find that really it's important for me, so that it doesn't become this thing kind of floating away in the distance in my past. So I really appreciate the chance to talk about it, and thank you all for listening to me ramble on. And if any of it was any use, or if you got anything from it, then I'm deeply honored.
We appreciate you so much. I know it's late in Maryland. And for
A little bit late. We've got school in the morning, and I hope they all went to bed. I'm looking, I can see in my kitchen window here, and I can't see anybody in there, but they're probably hiding. I'm delighted that I haven't been in there to tell them that it's time to go to bed. Teenagers can be very bold.
I believe it. I'll take your word for it. We are meeting next week, 5/23, so a whole week, and then a few days, 5/23 at 7:30 Central, and we will be discussing From the Passenger Seat with Gabe Robeck, which is the producer, filmmaker.
Yep.
And Cindy Wyman, who is the mother.
Yeah, Gary's mom.
Oh, Gary's mom. So thank you. Start over. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for continuing to join this project. Thank you, Bruce. You're amazing. And you guys all have a wonderful Mother's Day with you and yours.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
Mother's Day.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.